Hello you beautiful people, Aaron here, back with another video. It's time to discuss the value and worth of the Kazuha and Alhaitham banners. Again, if you like this content, please take a bite out of that subscribe button down below. This time, it tastes like a maple cream cookie, which apparently exists. Interesting. But with all that out of the way, let's hop right in, starting with the character banners and best boy Kazuha. Kazuha was and still is an absolute monster of a character. His elemental skill provides some of the best grouping in the game, that has a huge AoE and continues to bring enemies together even after he goes off field. Along with this amazing grouping potential, his skill also allows him to jump mid-air, making him the best character for gliding over long distances. His elemental burst is great too, as it's able to absorb an element and apply it to enemies in a huge AoE. Both of his AoEs are the second largest damage areas in the game, as his skill is only beaten by the size of Xiangling's hold skill, and his burst is beaten out only by Mona's. This is not all he does though, as he is able to convert his elemental mastery into damage percent for his entire team to use. This is absolutely insane, as in tandem with the Viridescent Venereer artifact set, plus the fact that he can apply and shred the resistances of Hydro, Pyro, Electro, and Cryo, makes him one of the best all-around buffing supports in the entire game, if not the best. He is best boy for a reason. Then there's Alhaitham, who is a monster of a DPS unit. He deals some of the most damage in the game and excels in all sorts of content. His Dendro application is also some of the best, as it's quite large and very fast, making him useful as a simple Dendro driver if you need one for Nilo teams, for Burgeon, or for Hyperbloom. His AoEs are large, his Dendro application is fast, he's decently versatile, and his damage is high. What's not to love? He's certainly earned his spot as one of the best characters in the game. However, I should also say he's not a must pick. Alhaitham is sadly a main DPS, which is one of the worst primary roles a character can have due to his worth being based on the party he's with rather than the other way around. Since the main DPS department is absurdly saturated, there's also less of a reason to get him. Having Nahida, Ayaka, Hu Tao, and the Raiden Shogun lessen his worth tremendously too, as Nahida is much more versatile and an amazing buffing support, while the others also deal insane damage. So why get him over everyone else? It's preference really. That's about it though. However, these two characters are definitely some of the best units in the game, and they definitely serve as probably top 20. But now let's just say you want some early constellations on these units. What can you expect? Kazuha gets a ton from his early constellations. His C1 grants him an extra skill cast after his elemental burst, which effectively doubles his grouping potential and doubles his energy generation. This allows him to get away with building 40 to 60% less energy recharge. This reduction lets Kazuha swap his Favonius Sword or energy recharge main stat out for an elemental mastery one, leading to a bit more personal damage and a bit more buffing potential. Then there's his C2, which is notorious for being insane, and that's for a good reason. The damage buff this constellation provides is through the roof. While it may lead to just around 5% damage increase for team comps that don't really need the 200 elemental mastery he provides, it pops the hell off in team comps that really benefit from the buff. This buff is so potent that it can increase the damage output of a team member by up to 20%. This proves to be very powerful in melt and vape teams, as this buff can be snapshot by these two reactions, so Rosaria and Xiangling will deal even more damage than they were already. This does also help out Aggravate and Hyperbloom teams, but not as well since Aggravate and Bloom reactions don't snapshot, so the buff will only be going to the main DPS and Kazuha himself. Now what about Alhaitham? Well, unfortunately, his first constellation is rather pointless. It helps reduce the cooldown of his elemental skill, which is good, as it allows him to have a constant Dendro infusion. It can make his rotations easier, but that's about it. His second constellation is also good, but it's rendered rather redundant since it also provides 200 elemental mastery, but only to Alhaitham. Again, this is good and ends up increasing his damage output by about 15%, but given how it's just a much more limited version of Kazuha's second constellation, I cannot recommend going for it over Kazuha's. Now with the 5 stars out of the way, let's go onto the 4 stars, going from best to worst, starting with Yaoyao. Yaoyao, my god, how I was wrong about you in my initial analysis. Yaoyao is one of the best characters in the entire game, and is the second best Dendro character in the game in my not so humble opinion. Her versatility, Dendro application, and healing output is through the roof, making her quite the staple in all sorts of Dendro related team comps. It's to the point where she proves to be more valuable than a good amount of 5-star units. Xiangling is next, as she is an amazing sub DPS option that is able to output more damage than some main DPS options. While she hasn't received any buffs buffs as of late, she is still a very strong option to use as she always has been. Since she is a 4-star, I can't even say that her worth has even diminished, as you don't have to waste pulls on her. She's just a great staple like Yaoyao. Now onto the final character. And you know a character banner is freaking cracked when the worst character here is an animo one. Heizou is a great character, but is just outclassed by his stronger compatriots. This doesn't mean Heizou is bad though, as he still serves as a very valuable option if you have few other animo units or just don't like them. His free elemental mastery buff to the team is incredibly beneficial too, as it allows him to buff his entire team while still outputting a crap ton of damage. While he doesn't deal enough damage to be considered a fantastic main DPS, he can still do a lot and can also serve as a very valuable burst DPS and debuffer. So how does this banner look? In my opinion, and I don't mean this lightly, like I just checked all the other character banners, this is the best character banner we have ever had. Both featured characters are insane units that offer so much to an account and just do so much. Though we have had other banners that have been this good in terms of 5 stars and even better, the kicker with this banner set are the 4-star units, who are also insane, or at worst great in Heizou's case. So would I recommend you pull on these banners? Absolutely! All of these units are fantastic and have so much to offer, even their constellations. I cannot express how good these banners are. They are just so insanely good. Like it's freaking insane. Let's move on to the weapon banner though, going through the same process of 5 stars, then 4 stars from best to worst. We'll start with the Freedom Sworn since we started with Kazuha. This weapon is one of the best in the entire game, no lie. While the main stat it has is not that beneficial on some characters, the passive is. The same can be said the other way around, as certain characters want the main stat but not passive, and there are those that can use both. This weapon is truly insane as it offers damage percent to the user, along with a team-wide noblesse buff and a team-wide normal charged and plunging attack bonus, which ends up just going to the main TBS. This weapon is the best in slot weapon for Kazuha, Kuki, Shinobu, Jin, and all forms of the Traveler except Geo. This weapon also proves to be a very powerful option on Bennett, who provides a better buff given the fact that he can proc the weapon's passive, Kaya, Layla, Jingshou as a buffing option, Chi-Chi, Albedo, Ikiki, Nilo, and even Alhaitham if you don't have a better damage focused weapon for him. Now you may be saying, Aaron, you just listed almost every single sword character in the game. Isn't that a little over the top? But that just proves my point at how stupid this weapon is, especially because it turns any character into a support, or it amplifies what every other support already does. It's absolutely phenomenal. While the substat isn't as great for most characters, it will still be of benefit, and while it might seem a bit difficult to proc the effect, the only character that will actually have some trouble with it will be Bennett. But is this weapon a must pull? No, absolutely not. No weapons are must pull, especially with the Fav series in the game, but I would say that in my opinion it is one of the closest options out there in terms of value. However, if you're looking for this weapon specifically for Kazuha, note that a C0 Kazuha with a Refinement 1 Freedom Sworn provides usually around 7.5% more damage for a specific target, while his C2 will provide anywhere between 5% to 20% more damage to a specific target depending on how heavily they are impacted by elemental mastery. Also note that individual parts of the Millennial Movement weapon series buff does not stack. Next is a light of Foliar Incision, which is the weirdest freaking name I've ever seen, but it is a very strong stat stick weapon. It's generally on par with the other elite damaging swords in the game. This weapon offers the most crit of any other weapon in the game, but with the downside of having a very situational passive effect. It also does not favor attack-focused scaling characters, which the other best swords do, which makes it beneficial in those situations where your characters scale harder with another stat, or if you already have an insane attack stat. However, at the current moment, this weapon is simply outscaled by Jade Cutter and Mistsplitter Reforged due to their better and more versatile stat lineups. So should you get this weapon, I would suggest against it since it's really only great on Alhaitham at the moment, and since there are other better and more versatile options available, which are even on par with Foliar Incision for Alhaitham himself. In fact, the other 3 overpowered swords are about merely 9% off damage-wise for Alhaitham, so getting Constellations on him is the better option despite his first not being useful. What about the 4 stars for this weapon banner? For 4 stars, the best is the Favonius Sword. I mean, it's a Fav weapon. How is it not overpowered? The great part about Fav Sword is that it can be used on every single sword user other than Albedo, because the rest are either supports, where it is one of, if not their best weapon, or are rather energy hungry. Favonius Codex is in a similar slot, but with other powerful supportive catalysts in the game, the worth of this weapon is diminished somewhat. In most cases, Thrilling Tales of the Dragon Slayer does more for your team team than Fav does, especially on characters that scale with HP or have other buffing mechanics that scale well with the attack buff. Then we have the Wavebreaker's Fin, which is a stronger version of the Ketch. It grants a great amount of attack and burst damage, making it amazing on Rosaria, Xiangling, and Raiden. However, it only reaches this potential at high refinements and in comps that have high burst costs. Mouun's Mouun is similar as it also serves as a powerful burst damage buffing option. However, there's not many bow characters that can use this weapon effectively. Despite that, it can still be used on Kujosara, Baruzan, Dylan, Freeze Ganyu, and DPS Venti, though not as well as some other weapons. Then there's Sacrificial Greatsword as the worst option. Its main issue is that it's a great sword, but despite that, it's a pretty decent option for both Sayu and Dori, though it is just outclassed by the Favonius weapon series. Overall though, this is an amazing weapon banner. While the light of Foliar Incision is not overpowered, it still serves as a stupid crit stat stick. There's also the fact that this is the best banner that Freedom Sworn has ever been on, since the last few times it was on a banner was with Eula in her last rerun, or next to Klee with some stat stick catalysts. It also has Fav weapons, which are the best weapon series in the game. This banner is so great. I would go so far to say that this is in the top 5 for best weapon banners we have ever received. Both of these banners are elite and offer so freaking much, both in the 5-star options and 4-star options. I have never recommended a banner as highly as I do with these ones. These are both so insanely good. But the question is, should you pull? Oh hell yeah, you should. Well, unless you have a personal reason, but otherwise everything here is absolutely phenomenal. Now is definitely the time to pull, especially with not so neat banner sets that are supposedly on the horizon. Good news is, if you have any doubts about pulling, save until the live stream to see what's coming next. But that's all I have for today. What are your thoughts about the banner sets? Are you pulling for any character or weapon? Do you think I was wrong in my assessment? Tell me in the comments down below. But with that, I will get out of your hair. Thank you all so much for watching, and I hope you all have a wonderful day. Bye bye!